and say, you know, this is something for the ages. This is a bit like a rose, as opposed to this is a bit of a, you know, it's a 1-2 year thing, and it's going to end anyway after that. So how are you going to convert the idea into something that's going to sustain institutionally?
I think the key here is one, I mean, as we've been talking about buy-in and partnerships. I think, and that's what we're trying to do right now, create partnerships with not just ministries, but also with expertise and organizations that exist outside of government. So the way we envision the fellows to be remunerated for their work is the government would be paying the salaries. Again, this is all subject to this all currently being worked out in our discussions. But the way we envision it, we prefer it to be in a way where fellows are remunerated for their salary by the government. But then all the leadership development institutes, as well as other leadership support that we are providing, would come from a corpus of funds that would have contributions from multiple foundations, private sponsors, etc., philanthropists, so that we are able to not just provide a great experience to the fellows, but also institutionalize it in a very sustainable way, as I think has come out, that there is a need to make it sustainable. And I think one of the ways we can make sure that it remains sustainable is through partnerships with organizations that are committed to this cause, whether they exist within government or whether they exist outside.
Is it fair to say, Anirudh, that the conversations with some of the foundations, the initial conversations, have been incredibly positive, and that people are actually quite willing, you know, once the plan is put in place, to make this happen?
If that's a leading question, yes. No, but I totally would say that the response we've received when we've proposed this idea to people within ministries, in my own office, as well as with companies like McKinsey, foundations, it's been an overwhelming response. In fact, I've had people say, in fact, there are some people in the audience, when I first told them this idea, they said, thank God, finally someone's doing this. Right? Because there's clearly a need, but I think the institutional capacity to push this program forward is what's been lacking. And so I think that's, people recognize that, and I think our efforts have so far received an overwhelming response. I mean, even the number of people who came here as an indication of the idea and how it resonates. So yeah.
So no questions, because there's some questions people have sent in, but before I go to those, any questions from the group here that folks have? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Aman. I study philosophy and economics at the University of Chicago. This whole scheme is fantastic, but a question that I have is a little off-center. It has more to do with your personal experience, those on the panel who have managed to secure some sort of working positions with MPs like Sachin Parlat and Naveen Jindal. How receptive have they been? And if you wouldn't mind, what sort of incentives do you think they have to hire you, apart from the fact that you want the job? And how many do you think they can possibly really absorb? Because there's a lot of us, a lot of potentially, a lot of future Malaikanis in this room. You never know, and a lot of McKinseys, which translates to a lot of great people. So my question then is, do you think you have enough MPs who would be receptive with this idea?
I think so. I don't know if you guys, I think it's a growing number. I can't obviously say to you that all 540 MPs are one aware of this need or aware that this could benefit them if they had young professionals working. But my experience has been extremely positive, and my experience working in Mr. Pilot's office has created, I think, some new ways of doing things within the office. Very small things, right? And we're talking about impact not at like a policy level, but just managing the way something is run, or managing the way something is reviewed, or doing the research that needs to go behind writing a policy memo. So one of the things I'm doing for every meeting that Mr. Pilot will have on a particular topic, I do the background policy research. I figure out what's being said both in the government, outside by private sector players, as well as by academics. I provide him a brief memo, so that when he goes into a meeting, he is very well aware of the issues that are involved. I'm not telling him to do this or that. I'm informing him of the issues at stake. And he has been very welcoming of that, and I think that was his incentive, that he would have someone with policy experience, someone with management experience, come in and contribute in some way. And again, talking about impact and experience, I think you can't sort of have one or the other in isolation. For me, the experience has been, if I talk about my experience, it's been the experience that's been the most wonderful thing, not the impact. Yeah. I think it would take much longer to create the right impact. And I think you have to be cognizant of that. Like a 3-month, 1-year stint could be even detrimental sometimes, because sometimes you want to just come in and make a change, whereas you don't realize all the things that need to be thought of. So.
If I can just add to that, I'm at the Ministry of Human Resource Development, and I've been here for 6 months now. And the average age of consultants, HRD has a consultancy program, and the average age of consultants there is about 40-45 years. And it's only been 6 months for me there, and the ministry's already started asking me to bring more young people in. And the first, I think, the step that they took was that any meeting that happens, I'm the first to respond. That's what they want, because the freshness of the ideas are there. Sometimes even if they're bizarre or funny or all of those, but they do recognize the value of fresh opinion.
If I can just quickly say, it's not 540 MPs in the Lok Sabha. There have been at least 20 that have actually personally said that they'd be very open to such an idea. The question becomes one of how old should that person be? Because if you're in college and you're graduating from, for example, the University of Chicago, right, coming into an MP office here, right, I think the thing you have to be prepared for is it's going to be a bit more sort of less hands-on, right? And I don't think the infrastructure, the setup exists to give you the kind of mentoring and the development that can extract the most out of you, unless there's a bit of a hierarchy or a structure in there. And for that, I think we're still in the early days. So my own sense is it's probably, it's 20 out of 30 or whatever, but there is a large number of people who would be interested, but not all of them have the setup in order to make the best use of your talent at your age. But people with experience, I think it could be actually quite different, particularly people who've been in government and who've seen things and who now want to go somewhere else. I think it's just, that is why it's a little bit more sort of, this fellowship will hopefully provide the kind of platform to give you that mentorship.
That's exactly the gap, the institutional setup that does not exist, that we are hoping to fill through the fellowship.
Any more questions?
One question I had was that, and maybe this is something for later down the years, but I was wondering, how do you open these kinds of institutional mechanisms and opportunities to non-English speaking elite in India? Out to people in the villages, in the districts, and the people who are, the language barriers exist clearly, the barriers of elitism exist. How do you, get past those barriers? Because it's a question not just of bringing talent in, but it's also a question of bridging that very, very vast divide between rural and urban India.
That's a very good question, observation. And just as this fellowship is thinking of going down to the state level, what I would suggest to answer your question is that every state government needs to start a fellowship. And because we are a multilingual country, working with the government of India needs a lot of English skills workforce. But definitely state governments were to have these fellowship programs, which is not going to be hard at all if this one takes off. And I think there will be a buy-in. And in fact, there is more action, I would feel, in many state governments. If you're in Andhra Pradesh or Karnataka or Punjab or even Jharkhand, there's a lot of work, and it is real cutting-edge work where fresh ideas make a big difference.
The reason I bring that up is, absolutely. The reason I also bring that up is because I'll give you an example of, I've done some reporting on the ground on the Naxal issue, and there is a tribal person I met who just astounded me with his knowledge